Hi, my name is Amy Weinkoff. Today I'll be presenting research that I conducted at the Center for Democracy and Technology along with my co-author, Kevin Kleiman. In 2023, the National Eating Disorders Association launched an AI chatbot called Tessa to support people struggling with body image and eating disorders. At first, Tessa only delivered fixed responses that had been vetted by experts. But after a technical update replaced that system with a generative AI model, the chatbot began giving dieting and weight loss advice to people who were seeking help. This incident shows how both general purpose and specialized AI systems can end up harming vulnerable users, and why it's important to understand not only obvious risks, but also the more subtle, clinically meaningful ways that generative AI can worsen existing vulnerabilities. Some existing AI risk taxonomies and benchmarks do attempt to measure risk related to eating disorders, but they often group these risks together with suicide and self-harm, making it difficult to isolate eating disorder-specific concerns. They also tend to focus on very explicit cases, such as users directly asking for advice about purging, while overlooking more indirect and subtle ways that AI systems can reinforce disordered eating. We aim to address this gap by developing a taxonomy of risks grounded in the perspectives of experts to better reflect how generative AI can contribute to eating disorders. We conducted semi-structured interviews with 15 experts in eating disorders, including clinicians, researchers, advocates, and scholars studying how people with eating disorders use digital technologies. In each interview, we discussed their familiarity with AI tools and which kinds of interactions they considered to be risky. We analyzed the interviews using an abductive, qualitative approach, combining both established theory and new concepts from the data. We then clustered these codes into broader themes that formed the basis of our taxonomy, and then refined our analysis through feedback from our experts. Our analysis revealed 7 overarching categories of generative AI interactions that could pose risks to those vulnerable to eating disorders. The first category identified by our experts was generalized health advice. This category includes AI responses or recommendations on calorie targets, healthy BMI ranges, meal plans, or estimates of calories burned by exercise. This information may be neutral or even useful for some people, but experts emphasize that it can be risky for vulnerable users. First, AI systems can be inaccurate or overly confident, mixing correct and incorrect information in ways that are hard to detect and easy to trust. Second, people with eating disorders often engage in rigid black and white thinking, so they may interpret AI advice as inflexible rules. Third, this guidance is not personalized. AI may provide guidelines that are in line with recommendations for the general public. However, individuals at risk for an eating disorder can have very different needs. As a result, generalized advice can be actively harmful. The second category focuses on AI interactions that directly support disordered eating, such as advice on hunger suppression, purging, extreme restriction, or weight loss substances. This kind of advice might arise through explicit requests from users or through more indirect or evasive prompting. A major challenge here is that it's often difficult to tell whether a user's question reflects a genuine interest in health or an attempt to sustain an eating disorder. In clinical settings, providers rely on contextual cues such as body language or tone to make this judgment, but AI systems typically lack that context and tend to respond to the surface of the question rather than its underlying motivation. Our third category focuses on AI interactions that provide advice on how to hide eating disorder behaviors or their effects from others. This could be explicit, such as asking how to conceal purging, or more indirect through prompts designed to get around safeguards. Experts noted that guidance on concealment has long circulated in pro-eating disorder communities online, but generative AI can now make this information more accessible, seem more private, and more personalized. At the same time, they emphasize that attempts to block this kind of content can sometimes remove recovery-oriented or harm reduction material as well. So mitigation efforts need to balance multiple, sometimes competing goals. Our fourth category included AI-generated thinspiration, meaning AI-generated images and text that encourage people to conform to idealized body standards through weight loss, body transformation, or restrictive eating. Experts emphasize that images are especially powerful sources of thinspiration. Now, generative AI makes thinspiration more personal by allowing users to create bodies that resemble themselves, but in more idealized forms. Over time, this can provide continuous reinforcement for increasingly extreme goals, including through reverse triggers that motivate users to avoid feared body types. AI inspiration is not limited to images. AI generated diet narratives and lifestyle advice can function in analogous ways to influencer content, presenting restrictive patterns as aspirational and socially validated. Our fifth category included AI interactions that reinforce negative self beliefs and unhealthy comparisons. Our experts explained that people with eating disorders are often highly sensitive to cues about what is normal or acceptable and tend towards perfectionism and harsh self evaluation. AI systems can intensify these patterns by mirroring users' emotional tone, validating distorted beliefs, or praising rigid body or performance goals in ways that reinforce contingent self worth. Over time, these interactions can contribute to rumination and worsening symptoms, even when individual exchanges appear harmless, making this difficult to detect through simple safeguards. Our sixth category included interactions with AI that direct users' attention to their bodies or to specific body parts. Experts explained that people with eating disorders are often highly sensitive to these cues and tend to fixate on areas of their body they perceive negatively. When AI systems repeatedly encourage this kind of focus, for example, through fitness or mindfulness prompts, they can increase anxiety and reinforce disordered thinking. Our last category included AI interactions that reinforce narrow or stereotype portrayals of people with eating disorders, such as portraying these conditions as only affecting thin, young, white, or affluent women. Experts warned that these portrayals can make it harder for people from underserved or non-stereotypical groups to recognize their symptoms or be identified by providers. This is especially concerning for groups that already face barriers to care, including gender nonconforming individuals and people who are not thin. When AI systems reproduce these assumptions, they can delay diagnosis, worsen disparities, and contribute to serious harm. To close, one of the main takeaways of our research is that these risks aren't well captured by looking at single responses or treating harms as discrete content categories. They show up through interaction pathways where vulnerable users, system features, and broader cultural narratives can combine and reinforce each other over time. The affordances of generative AI, like personalization, persistent control, and private feeling conversation, can make these pathways easier to activate, whether through ordinary use or more intentional misuse. While AI poses clear risks, our paper isn't arguing that generative AI should be categorically excluded from all eating disorder contexts. Instead, it points to the need to treat these systems as configurable socio-technical systems and to design, evaluate, and govern them with clinical insight to reduce harmful pathways while enabling bounded beneficial use. Thank you so much, and to find out more about CDT's work, please visit cdt.org.